Well, good morning to another episode of All About Shanghai. Now, I've just arrived at by the metro, to our destination today. But had this been about 20 years earlier, I could have flown here. Because I'm standing here on the old runway of Longhua Airport. It's now a public space put over to pedestrians and whatnot. This is the runway, the airport, from which Song Mei-ling, who was the wife of Chiang Kai-shek, fled in 1949. So there was great historical importance to this place. Today we're going to take a walk along West Bund Cultural Corridor. It's mainly down by the river, which is that away, so we'll take a walk down there. I won't steal my own thunder and tell you what's down there, but as we walk along, we'll describe some of those features and just give you a guided tour. So let's go. It's a cold morning here in Shanghai. Now, the first sort of facility we've reached is this. It's called the West Bund Art Center now. It used to be the Shanghai aircraft factory, and apparently this is where the first jet civil aircraft was designed and built by Chinese engineers. We peeked into the windows, which is around the edge, and to find out what's sort of going on, because there's no obvious entry here. And there's a huge, vast space in there, but not much else. Which is a bit odd, because it's been open since 2015. Let's carry on to the Riverside Park. Now this is the front of the West Bund Art Center. Of course it has a cafe, that's great. This is great, there's a tree here. They've cast a shadow in a mosaic, which is quite nice. Now then, we have walked to the West Bund Art Center, which is quite close to the river, and this is the first of the sort of the significant art facilities that underpins this whole West Bund Cultural Corridor. It used to be, and you can probably tell this, the old Shanghai aircraft factory, and it's where the first jet was designed and engineered, manufactured by Chinese engineers. And this whole complex, all the outbuildings of the factories too, they're all different sort of genres, if you like, of art, either art exhibits, art museums, art galleries, or sort of from a practitioner's point of view, places where artists can go. You may see over there something called Shang Art, and there's digital art. And of course it's all underpinned by a lovely cafe. And across the road, which we'll see in a moment, but we might be able to persuade the cameraman to pan around in a moment, is the very significant and lively West Bund Art Museum. So all of these facilities, including the ones we've yet to see, came out of the 2010 World Expo that was just across the river, or in Shanghai, obviously. And it was in 2011 when the 9th Party Congress of Shuhui, we're in the district of Shuhui, specifically said, let's have this part of the riverside be a cultural corridor. And they wanted to model it after London's South Bank or Paris's Left Bank. So let's go and see how they've done. So this is the West Bund Museum, what I've been calling the West Bund Art Museum. They have a partnership with the Pompidou Center in Paris, as a result of which 2 exhibits, The Voice of Things and Architecture of Greater Paris, to which we will definitely come back. except that we can't. It just ended. Bollocks. And as you can see, it's easy enough to pick up a bike or take a bus. Getting around is definitely no problem in Shanghai for the ordinary person. Right, we're now at the southern end, or practically the southern end, of the public walkway that runs along this part of the West Bund Cultural Corridor. The whole walkway is about 3.6 or 3.8 kilometers, but the length of riverfront that goes from the downstream end to the upstream end behind me is about 11.4 kilometers. So there's more that can be developed. But just to put you in a sort of spatial context, the entire parkland and cultural corridor runs from the Lupu Dachau, which of course you can't see from here, but we'll try to show you in some drone footage. But you can see sort of the buildings of the new Bund development and the sort of the white, the shiny white part of the Oriental Sports Complex, which was built in about 2008, I think. So that marks really the southern end of this. And across to the north, this is the Huangpu River, of course. It's normally chock-a-block with barges and small container ships and all sorts of river traffic. And wouldn't you know it, today, for some reason, it's quiet as a dormouse. Very odd. It might be because the tide is well out, but maybe later on. And as we continue to pan around, we'll see here the sort of the front elevation, or the riverfront elevation of the West Bund Museum. And behind the camera now, but we won't ask the camera to turn around, is helicopter landing pads which operate as sort of a, I think, river sea and rescue operation centre. And we've been told specifically not to photograph those, and so we won't. Right, well, let's continue to walk down this lovely riverside park. It's a bit of an overcast day, it's cold, but we'll do anything for you. Let's go. Oh, finally, a river barge. And over there, just beyond the sort of helicopter rescue landing pads, is the tank museum. I think it's called Shanghai Tank. This is the closest we can get to it without being told off. Not quite sure how to get into it. Now finally you get to meet the partner in these productions. Hello Mike, how are you doing? He's a bit camera shy. Never mind. Well, we've been continuing our walk. As you can see, it's gotten a bit colder. The wind has come up. We're stopping here just to show you one of the other 5 museums. This is called the Yuz Museum. At the moment, an exhibition of Yoshitomo Nara. And as always, we will go in here one day and have a look, show you around. But you can see peeking over the first roof of the building, it's the obvious sign of an old hangar. Well, it is an old hangar of Longhua Airport, which is where we began this episode today. This whole area has been beautified very, very tastefully. And there's avenues of London plane trees and other unknown trees, because at the moment I don't know what they are, but they're leafless. It'll be nice when it's spring and even early summer. We can come back and enjoy some sandwiches, a cold beer, and a relaxing book to read. But for now, it's back to the gloves, the hat, and let's go on. So while we're here, we can see, and I have to pay attention to my favourite view in all of Shanghai. We can't let an episode go by without talking about this set of buildings on the horizon. It's peeking into the blue skies beyond the haze. The middle one, the tallest, is the Shanghai Tower, of course, 632 metres. One to the right is the World Financial Tower. And then the one to the left is one that we often don't see it because it's hidden behind the silhouettes of the other two. That's the Jin Mao Tower. The Jin Mao Tower actually used to be the tallest in the world between about 2007, 2009 or thereabouts. And then to the right of those three towers is the longest single arch bridge in the world. Now I say single arch, I have to be careful now, because there's one arch bridge that's longer by 2 meters, and that's in Chongqing, but that's a double arch. And when I say length, I think I'm talking about the length between the stanchions or the vertical towers or the piers that are in the river, the span across the river. And I think the span here is about 450 or 460 odd meters. But that's just hearsay. Underneath the arch is the chimney of the power station. No longer a power station, it's the MOCA, the Museum of Contemporary Arts. And that used to get fed by coal, which came in here at the Baifiao coal wharf. And we'll show you the remnants of the hopper that used to take that coal from ships. In fact, you'll also see a couple of examples painted in glorious orange of these wonderful sort of 1970s vintage docking cranes. And our walk today will take us all the way past those cranes to the next significant cafe, which I can tell you will be well needed. Time to go. So as I'm walking along here, I should tell you a little bit about the history of this area. Of course, it's all been gentrified and beautified and parkified today, but it used to be sort of the centre of 19th century and early 20th century industries, including the significant Shanghai cement factory that apparently supplied cement to many of the hotels and large buildings, possibly including some of these older buildings on the Bund that we've been featuring in earlier episodes. Longhua Airport, you've seen that one of course, it opened in 1917 and closed finally in 2008. Now to my left, and on this bank of the river, is what looks like sort of a wrapped up tulip, which is the harbour master control of at least this part of the river. And then behind that and off to my left are these rather glitzy south-facing apartment buildings. Now this is one of the, well, I think it's the prominent bridge that crosses one of the principal canals that comes into the Huangpu. And it's a good time, by the way, there's another flood control dam that we saw in an episode of Then and Now. And reminds me to say that, of course, Shanghai is underlain by a labyrinthian network of canals that enabled supplies and materials to move around the city easily and quickly and efficiently, especially in the days before there was a good road network. If you look at an old 1920s, 30s, 40s maps of Shanghai, there are small rivers, streams and canals everywhere. Many of these have been filled in now, are now covered by things like elevated highways and wide boulevard roads that run east-west through Shanghai. But many are also retained as canals, some working canals. There's one just across the river from here that carries traffic all the way from the Huangpu to the South China Sea, or the Pacific Ocean, as I like to call it. Oh, good. Back into the warmth of the sun trying to come through this heavy overcast. A nice chilly breeze rustling through the trees. Oh, bring on spring, but you can keep summer back. And finally, the river traffic is coming upstream on our side of the river. So the tide must be turning, allowing these boats to take advantage of the small tidal currents. The tide here is about, depends where you are exactly, and of course the time of year and day. Sorry, time of year. But it's about 2 to 3, sometimes 4 meters. And there's a couple of hours lag between the high tide at the confluence of the Huangpu and the Yangtze River, which is about 20 odd kilometers, maybe 25 that away downstream, and here. This is where the elevated pathway begins, this part of the park. And they've installed a climbing wall, not very high. It's a small sort of climbing wall that runs all around this part of the elevated walkway with a good mattress. Fantastic. Earlier on, I saw some kids doing their bit here in the climbing wall. It's fantastic. You know, there's no sort of booking of turns or anything. You just come here and do it. Not me though. Now, in the couple of hours it's taken us to walk this far, there's a lot more river traffic, and we are on a significant bend in the river here. So it's a good place to come and watch the boats drift around the corner. Sort of a slow version of Mario Kart. Right, over on. Now here on the elevated walkway, it's a good moment to learn a lesson about these sorts of places in Shanghai at least, and probably in China. But there is no place that cannot be improved by some little bit of tweaking and modification. And here it is. About a week ago, this was all open to the public completely. And now it's being cordoned off, and they're doing some improvements, as we can see. Lovely contrast between old technology and new technology. That wheelbarrow design, I swear, has been here since the Ming Dynasty. In fact, I have it in mind to try to find a picture of a wheelbarrow like that in the Ming Dynasty. It's a challenge, isn't it? Why not? It's important to set yourself important challenges. Wheelbarrows in the Ming Dynasty. Well, why stop there? It could be in the Song Dynasty, or even the Three Kingdoms, or further back still. Now this is the downstream or northern end of the sort of public pathway. It's underpinned by the Long Museum, which is a private, possibly the largest private art gallery certainly in Shanghai, maybe in China. And the names of the benefactors or the founders of the museum will appear somewhere down here. And this used to be the place that coal was then docked at the wharf, and these are old coal hoppers that run down through the new building. The new building was designed and built to be an art museum, and the space inside here is really magnificent. Very big space, and well, just very large and vast. At the moment there's an exhibit in there called The Soul Remembers, or something like that. Anyway, here are a few pictures. Now we're still on this elevated walkway, which gives us a nice vantage point in looking out to a number of very important things in this park. We've already mentioned the Long Museum, and running straight into the Long Museum you can see these old railroad tracks. Those are the things that transported the coal from the coal hopper here to the power station that is farther well, behind the camera and downstream. Also, there's a dog park. Now, there aren't many places in Shanghai that you can bring a dog to and let the dog roam free. And I think part of the reason for that is that there isn't yet a culture of picking up after your dog. So not only is this a place where you can bring your dog and let it run free, but there's a place where you can find a doggy bag as well. And then on this side of the walkway, this railroad continues to one of the few skateboard parks that I've seen, at least in Shanghai. In the weekend this is crammed with young kids doing things that I find completely impossible to even conceive of. It's fantastic. I'm constantly amazed at what young people can do on things like skateboards and snowboards and skis and unicycles and bicycles and whatnot. Right, let's carry on. Right, well, here we are at the end of this episode, and as usual it turns out we have walked from the end of this riverside park, the West Bund Cultural Corridor, to the start. And it starts with what is called the Start Museum. I have to confess I don't know what's in the Start Museum, but I can tell you that it was built on the site of the South Nanpu railway station, which is one of the largest railway stations in Shanghai for a while in its day. It was a freight and passenger train station. It changed its name several times, and one time it was the South Shanghai railway station. It was designed by Jean Nouvel, the French architect who won the Pulitzer Prize, and who also designed the Museum of Art in Pudong, which we feature in another episode under our museums playlist. But while we're here, we can just pan slightly to the right and see a wonderful view of the Lupu Dachau, and just underneath the Lupu Dachau is the distinctive Mercedes Arena, which you will well remember from the Riverside Day Park 3 episode, I think it is, which is well worth a look. And of course they preserved more of these 1970s vintage docking cranes. But lots of things have been preserved. Just behind the camera are more of these railroad tracks that run down the wharf here. So this is a site, remember, of the coal wharf that used to be the principal importer of coal into Shanghai and was the most significant energy source in all of East China after liberation. Right, well, as you can see, it's still cold, still got the gloves, still got the hat. It's time for me and my erstwhile director and worthy cameraman to go and find somewhere warm, have a cup of coffee and maybe some lunch. So we will see you in the next episode. Don't forget, like us and subscribe. We'll see you later.